this because I'm not sure that there is a good answer to it. But it's basically along the lines of why don't more comic shops, why don't more retail shops object and resist and basically call up the publishers and say, hey, I don't like the quality of your comics, I'm angry, you need to fix things. Why don't more comic shops basically draw a line in the sand and say, we're tired of these variants, these incentive programs, this high price point, you're killing us, enough's enough. Well, I mean, the short answer is there's not really a ground that the retailer has to stand on. The retailer can choose to carry the product or not. And so when a comic shop closes, or when a retailer says, you know what, I've had enough, I'm going out, that is kind of them objecting. That's them saying, I'm not going to carry your crap anymore. It's not profitable for me. I'm moving on to something else. I think that's really, unfortunately, that's the most definitive, quote unquote, protest that a comic shop has. They don't really have other avenues. There's not, like, a comic shop can't pick up the phone and say, CB Sobolski, please, and the secretary's like, just a moment, owner of, Heroes Realm, let me get you right through to him. There is no method, and that's kind of I mean, that tells you a little bit about kind of all you need to know. Uh, there's not a dialogue to the publishers. Every now and then there's a convention, or there's a retailer summit, or there's something, but typically those are one directional speeches. Those are the publisher talking at the retailers, and occasionally there's a couple questions, but in that professional forum there's not a system. And sometimes, over the course of the years, if you've been a retailer long enough, then you'll have the ear of some employees, some editors, somebody. But not the guys at the top. There's a couple shops that are on a speaking name basis, and I'm sure have chats with a lot of the people at management, but they're not. It's not. It's a friendly thing. The biggest shop in the Seattle area is Golden Age Collectibles, and they do a beast of business. They're a high tourism spot. They're right smack dab in the middle of Pike Place Market, so they have a healthy, heavy audience. And they certainly sell comics, but they sell a lot of other merchandise too, because most of the people wandering into the store are wandering in there for the novelty of, hey, look, it's comics, and they're not. So that the people, if they want to sell stuff, they're going to be selling Funkos, they're going to be selling posters, they're going to be selling signed screenplays and all kinds of things, and that's what gets sold in that store. But those guys don't have a direct line to Joe Q, even though that they are the by far the biggest profit, highest selling retailer in the whole Northwest of the country. So there's just not a place, there's not an avenue for you to say anything to anybody, and the publishers are comfortable with that. They don't need to have that dialogue, and they don't solicit it, they don't want it, and they'll talk to who they want to talk to. If the comic shop said, you know what, I'm not carrying your book, the publisher kind of shrugs and says, all right, and they move on. They keep selling to the people who do. Comic shops there's no incentive for the shops to get organized. I wish they would, and there are loose, Facebook groups and other things, but there's zero bargaining power for the shops to really come together and say enough's enough. What it would take would be basically the 10%, and it's less than that. I think it's like the 5% of comic shops that make up the 85% of the money. It may be a little extreme. It's probably a little extreme, but not by much. It's a very small group of comic shops that control, the major distribution, the major sales. The Midtowns of the world. If Midtown came out and said, "Hey, screw you, I'm not accepting these policies. I'm not accepting these incentive programs," enough. But they're profitable business. Why would they do that? For the good of the industry? Well, they're profiting off the industry. So as far as they're concerned, the industry's fine. Would they do it for the good of the little shops that are their competitors? Of course not. Why would you do that? That'd be like Target saying, "Hey, distributor, you're treating Walmart badly. You should stop." Even though I'm doing fine and I'm making money, it's not fair to Walmart that you're giving these practices that we benefit from and Walmart doesn't. So will you please stop it? I mean, there's just no incentive for them to do that. So what can a retailer do? Well, the best thing a retailer can do is, very selfish. They can stay in business. They can find practices. They can find goods that they can sell in their store that are going to sell, and that's the best they can do. Sad as it is, that's staying alive is already more than half the battle. So keep battling. So find ways to diversify. Find ways to have other things in your store that are going to carry you through it. So that's 95% of the goal right there. Just stay alive. And then after that, it's figure out how you can be an influencer. Go to cons, find network, find friends, get comics that your audience likes into their hands. Sell what sells, and focus on staying alive and providing a good, solid service to customers who are going to pay for that service. That's really what you need to do. That's going to be the healthiest thing. Unfortunately, that's a very slow process. It's a process that keeps you employed, keeps the comic shop open, keeps the game in play, but it's not very satisfying, because what you really want to do is you want to kind of, in some cases, stomp your foot and say, no, enough's enough, and have that kind of moment. But that's just not how business works. That's not really how any business works. And unfortunately, the long game is the game, and that's just how life is. That sounds like a giving up kind of moment. I think a lot of people who don't own a business would much prefer, and I've gotten that feedback directly many times, very angrily, actually got that feedback of, hey, you're a retailer. You should be just saying, screw you. I'm not carrying any more Marvel comics. Forget it. Well, I'd be out of business. So is it worth it? Because the Marvel comics are still going to get sold. Do you think Marvel's going to like wake up one day and go, oh my God, we lost Perch? No, nobody's going to care. So, if I want to have a relationship with customers, if I want to sell products and move them, then the thing I need to do is have a sustainable business. The lesson that does get learned, and again, all the best battles, unfortunately, even though it doesn't feel satisfying in the moment, the best battles are won over time. And the battle that needs to be won right now is stay alive, have good content, have a healthy, functioning store, and win that way. Win through influence. Win through 20 years from now, when comics are very different, and they will be because they were different 20 years ago. Be there to sell them. Be there to provide that service. That's really all you can do. All you have to do. And there's power in that. There's power in longevity. There's been lots of jerks in the industry. And so if you're asking, what can a retailer, shouldn't the retailers be taking a stand? The best stand they can be taking is staying in business, is being there, so that, 20 years from now, when some of the worst elements of the business that are annoying everyone today are long gone, and they will be, that you're still there, surviving, thriving, providing comics, keeping this industry alive. That is a victory. That, in fact, is the ultimate victory. It's a hell of a lot better victory than standing up on a soapbox and throwing eggs at somebody and, frankly, prolonging their life. Because in this business, one of the very true things is, the old saying, it's any publicity is good publicity. Well, that's not true in the long term, but in the short term, it absolutely is. It's funny. I've watched time and time again a creator act like a complete a-hole, and some people object, and this has been true, by the way, for 30 years. So people object, and the creator or the publisher or the hype or whatever turns around to highly controversial creator, blah blah blah. And it's like, oh great, you just kept them in business, you kept them alive, because controversy sells. So well done there. You gave them another 2 to 3 years of life by making them a edgy, controversial writer. And you see a lot of creators and artists who are playing that today very effectively. The whole Chuck Wendig thing, he said some things that were completely offensive and isolating, and without a lot of outrage, without a big petition, without an online, petition form, he got fired. He got fired because he said crazy things that were not appropriate. And the only thing that can keep him relevant and keep him back in is if people continue to harp on it. He's gone. Take the win. Move on. If somebody says something super outrageous and super awful that isolates a bunch of people and they don't get fired, stop buying their stuff. Let your comic shop know. Comic shop people don't want liabilities and risks in their store either. They will also pull back. The way to keep things alive is to throw a fuss, whether you're a retailer or whether you're a fan or whether you're anybody. And so that's my comment to, what can the retailers do? Stay in business, survive, last longer, win the marathon. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So win the marathon. And the marathon is stay in business. Stay in business long after these people are gone, and then have a drink that you survived and they didn't. That's the best victory. Was it the best revenge is living well? So what can a retailer do? Live well. Find ways to live well. You agree? Disagree? Let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think. Subscribe, like, notify, all of that stuff, and follow me on Twitter, Comic Perch. Thanks for listening.